Which Florida park is more worth your time and money? That being Busch Gardens Tampa versus Islands of Adventure. Both these parks are incredible, and this will sure to be a close matchup, so stay tuned until the very end so you can figure out whether you should visit Busch Gardens Tampa or Islands of Adventure. Let's get started. So starting out with both parks' B&M looping coasters, that being Kumba at Busch Gardens Tampa and the Incredible Hulk coaster at Islands of Adventure. Now both these rides are incredible and they're both extremely intense loopers that both pack on the forces, both positive and negative. And now from personal experience, surprisingly Kumba is smoother. And if you're unfamiliar, that's surprising because the Incredible Hulk coaster got a full retrack in 2016. So in theory, it should be running smoother than Kumba. But also the Incredible Hulk coaster has given more rides than Kumba in that time frame, so I'm not surprised there. But still, it is surprising that Kumba is running smoother than the Incredible Hulk coaster. And also, personally with Kumba, I just feel like it's a much more forceful ride, and just the inversions are much more snappy and intense. And it's also smoother. Like, from my experience with the Incredible Hulk coaster this past February, it was running way rougher and the inversions weren't as intense as I remember. But one saving grace with the Incredible Hulk coaster is the Zero G roll after that launch destroys the Zero G roll on Kumba. As with the Incredible Hulk coaster Zero G roll, you get an abrupt pop of ejector airtime after that launch. And that is an incredible inversion right there. Probably second best in the park in terms of inversions. But the Incredible Hulk coaster, basically all the other inversions in my opinion, don't perform nearly as well as they do on Kumba. So for that, I will be giving Busch Gardens Tampa an extra 3 points for Kumba. So next, let's compare both parks' kiddie coasters. That being Air Grover at Busch Gardens Tampa and Flight of the Hippogriff at Universal's Islands of Adventure. Now, both these coasters achieve what they're meant to achieve of being a starting coaster for the young ones, but from a ride experience perspective, these are very similar despite having different layouts and being built by different manufacturers. But personally, one thing to note with these rides is Flight of the Hippogriff gets one of the longest lines I've ever seen for a family coaster / kiddie coaster, as I've seen waits for this thing get up to 90 minutes, and who in their right mind would wait an hour and a half for a freaking kiddie coaster? But besides that, I will be giving both parks an extra 1 point for their kiddie coasters, making the score 4-1, Busch Gardens Tampa in the lead. So now let's move on to both parks' family launch coasters. That being Cheetah Hunt at Busch Gardens Tampa and Hagrid's Motorbike Adventure at Universal's Islands of Adventure. Now, these coasters are surprisingly similar. If you forget all the great theming on Hagrid's, these rides are surprisingly similar as they both surprisingly pull on the G-forces. As no joke, Hagrid's definitely has more lateral forces than its more intense sister coaster, VelociCoaster, in the same park. Surprising. And then both these coasters have some pretty forceful launches considering their family coaster. But other than that, from the forces department, they feel very similar as you get not the strongest in terms like positive G-forces, negative G-forces, and so on. But one thing that does make Hagrid's better, and is the reason why I personally think it's better, is just because it's such a unique experience that tells a full story. And I'm not going to spoil the story here, but I will tell you the ride's unique elements it has. Like, for example, the ride does go backwards, and then you also have a drop track in the Devil's Snare, which will surprise a first-time rider definitely. Now, I knew about those coming in, but it definitely surprised some of my family members. But for those reasons, I will be giving Hagrid's Motorbike Adventure an extra 3 points for Islands of Adventure, making the score tied 4-4. Also, another thing to note with these two rides is they often get the longest lines in the park, and they are not worth waiting over an hour. That's just personally my opinion. Now let's move on to the battle for the best coaster in Florida. That being Iron Gwazi at Busch Gardens Tampa versus VelociCoaster at Islands of Adventure. And let me just tell you, well, one, both these rides are freaking incredible. And they are so similar that I mean, even until the recording of this video, I still go back and forth whether I prefer VelociCoaster. Because VelociCoaster has the way better theming and head choppers, but Iron Gwazi is just more wild experience, as both VelociCoaster and Iron Gwazi deliver very similar airtime and lateral forces and whatnot. But the thing is, Iron Gwazi, due to the profiling and also because of the fact that it has a mostly wooden structure, like all these elements just fling you around and throw you much more than VelociCoaster. Like, for example, the wave turns on both attractions. On Iron Gwazi, you get ejected out of your seat, while on VelociCoaster, you get a very strong pop of airtime, but it's much more controlled. And you can say the same thing about both attractions' outer bank turns, as with Iron Gwazi, you are just aggressively thrown to the side, while with VelociCoaster, you are thrown to the side, just not as violent. Because of that, I honestly personally prefer Iron Gwazi. But I will admit with VelociCoaster, you do have the much better inversions, as both coasters have a 0G stall, and personally on VelociCoaster it just hits much harder and is just a much better element overall. But Iron Gwazi, you have the death roll, which is amazing because you keep descending while building up speed, so you're out of your seat the whole way down. And with VelociCoaster, you have their Heartline roll, which is just insane how a Heartline roll can deliver this much airtime, as you literally eject out of your seat while you're over the water. And because of that, I mean, this is a very hard choice, as both these attractions are freaking amazing. And because of that, I will be giving Iron Gwazi an extra 3 points for Busch Gardens Tampa. Now, Busch Gardens Tampa has a couple unique coasters that Islands of Adventure just can't compete with. First, you have Shikra, which I will be giving 2 points for, which is the park's dive coaster that sends you down a vertical drop 200 feet down. Then you have Cobra's Curse, which is the park's spinning coaster, that I will be giving another 2 points for. Then you have Sand Serpent, which is the park's wild mouse coaster, which sends you around some tight hairpin turns, and for that I will be giving the park an extra point for. Then you have the oldest operating coaster in the park, Scorpion, which goes through a loop and is overall a pretty intense ride, and for that I will be giving an extra 1 point for. Then you have Montu, which is the park's acclaimed inverted coaster that is easily their second best coaster besides Iron Gwazi, and for that I will be giving them an extra 3 points for Montu. Then you also have Tigress, which is the park's swing launch coaster that heads through a Heartline roll 150 feet above the ground, and you get a ton of hang time, and because of that, I will be giving Tigress an extra 2 points for Busch Gardens Tampa, which will make the score 18-4, Busch Gardens Tampa in the lead. So as for Islands of Adventure's unique coasters, you have Pterodon Flyers, which is a suspended coaster located in Jurassic Park area that gives you a great view of the surrounding area and some more of the rest of Islands of Adventure. Now this is a pretty fun family coaster, but just a reminder with this ride, if you do want to do it, if you're over 56 inches, you will need a kid that is under 56 inches to ride. So just a note about that. But other than that, this is a fun family coaster that will be giving Islands of Adventure an extra 0.4, making the score 18-5, Busch Gardens Tampa in the lead. Also, Busch Gardens Tampa has some unique flat rides that Islands of Adventure can't compete with. First, you have their impressive 300-foot drop tower called Falcons Fury, which what makes this thing unique is that you freaking stare face first at the ground, 300 feet in the air, which because of that alone, it is one of the scariest flat rides I've ever ridden, and for that I will be giving Busch Gardens Tampa an extra 2 points for. You also have their brand new Serengeti Flyer, which is an S-Nest Scream and Swing, which is a pendulum ride that's controlled by compressed air, and this thing is surprisingly wild. As I mentioned earlier, the swings feel very controlled, so like you don't get the swings don't provide a ton of force, but you get a ton of wind in your face and some great floater airtime. So for that, I will be giving Busch Gardens Tampa an extra 2 points for, making the score 22-5, Busch Gardens Tampa in the lead. As for Islands of Adventure's unique flat rides, they have Dr. Doom's Fearfall, which is a drop tower that will launch you up and then bounce you before sending you back down to the ground. Now, it's a fun ride. It's nowhere near as good as Falcons Fury, but they're both very good, and you can't really compare the two as they give very different ride experiences. And for that, I will be giving Islands of Adventure an extra 2 points for Dr. Doom's Fearfall, making the score 22-7, Busch Gardens Tampa in the lead. Adventure also has a couple of great dark rides that Busch Gardens Tampa just cannot compete with. You first have The Amazing Adventures of Spider-Man, which is a 3D dark ride that obviously stars Spider-Man. It's in the name, what do you expect? But it's a 3D dark ride with plenty of special effects, and even though it's opened back in 1999 with the park, it's still running great and is seriously one of the best dark rides in the world. I highly recommend you ride this when you go to Islands of Adventure. You also have my personal favorite dark ride I've ever experienced, and that being Harry Potter and the Forbidden Journey. Now, I am not one bit a Harry Potter fan, but I do have respect towards the series, and personally, Harry Potter and the Forbidden Journey is just such a good ride. So, with Harry Potter and the Forbidden Journey, the ride vehicles can move in so many different ways to really simulate the flying experience. And so there's multiple times where you'll be facing like nearly straight up or to the side or basically in almost any direction you can think of. Also with Harry Potter and the Forbidden Journey, you're getting plenty of animatronics and special effects, even though it's mainly a screen-based experience. Then you also have the Cat in the Hat, which is actually surprisingly the only dark ride of the 4 at Islands of Adventure that doesn't feature any screens. And this is an oldie as it did open with the park, I believe. And it's definitely dated, but it is fun. Could get you a little bit dizzy, just keep in mind. But the kids will definitely enjoy the Cat in the Hat. That's why I'll be giving the Cat in the Hat an extra 1 point for Islands of Adventure. But I'll be giving Spider-Man an additional 3 points for Islands of Adventure, and Forbidden Journey another 3 points for Islands of Adventure. Then you also have Skull Island Ring of Kong, which is a mainly screen-based dark ride that takes you on a tour through Skull Island. And it's a fun dark ride, nothing special. Definitely a mediocre dark ride when it comes to Universal standards. And because of that, I will be giving Skull Island Ring of Kong an extra 2 points for Islands of Adventure, making the score 22-16, Busch Gardens Tampa in the lead. Moving on to the water rides. This is an area that Islands of Adventure just completely destroys Busch Gardens Tampa. So let's first compare both parks' log flumes. That being Stanley Falls Flume at Busch Gardens Tampa versus Doodly Doo Wright's Ripsaw Falls at Islands of Adventure. If you've ridden both these, Stanley Falls Flume is definitely your average log, and it's not even the most comfortable anyway. While Ripsaw Falls, on the other hand, for the most part, it's fairly comfortable other than the tight restraints, and it is just a league's better log flume. From the theming to the drops, which are much better and deliver some weightlessness actually, especially if you're sitting towards the back, and plus this will also get you soaked head to toe, unlike Stanley Falls Flume. So for that reason, I will be giving Doodly Doo Wright's Ripsaw Falls an extra 2 points for Islands of Adventure, making the score 22-18. So now let's compare both parks' River Rapids rides. That being Congo River Rapids at Busch Gardens Tampa versus Popeyes and Blueto's Bilge Rat Barges at Islands of Adventure. Now this is seriously not a competition like with the log flumes. As Congo River Rapids, it is a good ride with some decent landscaping, but the rapids are very weak, and you do have one waterfall and a couple sprayers here and there, but nothing that will get you overly drenched. Well, on the other side, Popeye's Bilge Rat Barges is the complete opposite. You will get drenched head to toe on this thing. From the violent rapid to the sprayers and waterfalls, you will just get drenched. And plus also, Popeyes has some amazing theming to go along with it. Now, I don't know anything about the Popeyes comics, so I don't know the context of the theming, but if you do know, post that down in the comments down below. But because of the theming and the fact that you'll get very wet despite not having a drop, I will be giving Popeyes and Blue Toes Bilge Rat Barges an extra 2 points for Islands of Adventure, making the score 22-20. Busch Gardens Tampa in the lead. Islands of Adventure has another water ride that Busch Gardens Tampa just can't compete with, and that being Jurassic Park River Adventure, which is a shoot the chutes ride that will get you absolutely drenched just like the other water rides at Islands of Adventure. Now, I haven't ridden this ride since 2018, but it's pretty awesome with all the animatronic dinosaurs, plus when you go inside the building for the main drop, there's just a ton of theming, and before you drop, there's a massive animatronic T-Rex that tries to basically bite the raft, which is hilarious. And because of all that theming and just the fact that you'll get so wet, plus the drop is pretty good, because of that, I will be giving Jurassic Park River Adventure an extra 2 points for Islands of Adventure, making the score 22-22 tied. Also, two more things that Busch Gardens Tampa has that Islands of Adventure just can't compete with. First up being the animals. As Busch Gardens Tampa, you can go there and not ride anything and still enjoy yourself seeing all the animals and shows. Now, Islands of Adventure has plenty of shows also, but Islands of Adventure is definitely more of a ride-focused park than Busch Gardens Tampa. And for those animals, I will be giving the park an extra 3 points for. Also, Busch Gardens Tampa is considerably cheaper than Islands of Adventure. Now, it's not necessarily a cheap park, as one-day ticket prices will typically range between $90 to $100, but compare that to Islands of Adventure, where the ticket prices typically range from like $120 up to like $160, $170. So for the pricing and the animal experiences, I will be giving Busch Gardens Tampa an extra 4 points, making the score 26-22, Busch Gardens Tampa in the lead. Final score, Busch Gardens Tampa wins 26-22. Now, the main reason Busch Gardens Tampa won is mainly because it has a deeper collection of roller coasters, as you have plenty of other thrill coasters that Islands of Adventure just can't compete with. But seriously, if Universal were to add more coasters at Islands of Adventure with the same levels of quality theming that we see on Hagrid's and VelociCoaster, Islands of Adventure could easily overtake Busch Gardens Tampa as the best park in Florida. The other benefits of Busch Gardens Tampa is that, as I mentioned earlier, there's much more to do other than the coasters, as Islands of Adventure does offer a couple shows, but Busch Gardens Tampa has a ton of animal exhibits that are actually really fun to watch, so pretty much anybody can enjoy their day at Busch Gardens Tampa. Also, Busch Gardens Tampa is considerably cheaper than Islands of Adventure, so for those reasons, if you had to choose one of these parks, I would totally visit Busch Gardens Tampa over Islands of Adventure. Now, if you can, I would visit both because both these parks are incredible. So if you enjoyed that video, remember to like and comment on this video. And also remember to subscribe to Southeastern Thrills, and also check out my How to Have the Best Day at both Islands of Adventure and Busch Gardens Tampa videos, and peace.